spec checked, making sure everything is working. Hopefully. If not, that's a little embarrassing. Wouldn't be the first time. And just some rapid typing as well. Gotta put this. Everything is okay. Cool. Cool. Alright. Yeah, hello. Sorry for missing last week, but life is overpowered. And I realized that, oh, I gotta get my fighting gear and do stuff. Even though I don't really like to do it, but I gotta do it. So, here we are. So, yeah, Fairy Robins, the new Survive event. Honestly, pretty exciting. And, I'm just gonna, like, probably share my thoughts about what's happening and what's I'm planning to do, just, like, coming up. And, we're just gonna quickly farm things out in the meantime. So, just, Fairy Robins. Even though they're kind of like, they're brave, and of course the Survive event is also brave. They're pretty good set. Like Bianchi is actually a very good welfare card herself, especially if you got the Backstreet Boys Jude, because while Jude's like a main DPS, you got Bianchi, who's basically New Year's 2024 Oscar with the whole like debuff and damage up versus the debuff kind of buffs kind of setup, which actually does yield a good amount of damage. The only downside is that it does cost 10% of his HP per cast, but it's honestly pretty cheap kind of cost if you do manage to get a couple copies. And yeah, for Robins who are actually very behind, I'd strongly recommend getting at least a copy or two if you can, and if not, that's okay as well. Otherwise, with the whole Faith and Marion jump scare just before the story event, that is absolutely bait that I fell for. But it's bait because they know that at the very least it's probably going to make a good amount of money. If not because they're great fans, but probably they're going to find some way to be like, oh yeah, we're going to tug on your heartstrings. Because every time Faith shows up, it's always before something bad happens. And by bad, I mean like something interesting in the story, but also like, oh, well, you know, there goes my wallet. It's gone now. So, it is what it is.
見られちゃった。以前よりも状況判断が早くなったようだな。おかげさまで。
The Survive event does bring a return of like, hey, bring in your staple brave and brave allies and just make sure they live and don't fall over with the whole debuffs and everything, and just plain damage, which shouldn't be too difficult if you've been raising up your team, hopefully. Brave is actually the pretty accessible attribute for welfares. So there's there's a good amount of options available if you don't have like another if you don't have this Faith, or you don't have another like DPS Faith such as like Full Party, or if you don't even have a Valentine's Gast, who would be another option if you use Marion instead. So I'd say this is definitely one of the easier survive events compared to the previous ones where it's just like, wow, this is awful. You gotta bring in like a 1-star Faith or you're gonna bring in Diner Jr. And yeah. I might go just a little bit shorter today, only because just gotta get back to it. And this is basically a minor update, kind of a live stream rather than a whole, hey, I have something planned. I don't really. I'm just here to like kind of chill and vent my thoughts. Oh. I will say that I do like that they finally got a I think they're striking a net. They finally got like a nice balance for the Arcana cards. Mostly because like yeah, it's nice, but ultimately there should be value in rolling them over like the union and the trade ones, and ultimately like the first two is like, oh yeah, this is pretty nice, but also has very niche usage. Like Sage was great, but also he would thrive in like very specific setups that most players would not really have access to. And given how Survive is just like, hey, it's a damage race, it's like all right, you gotta put together the piece of Exodia. But Exodia only lasts for 7 days compared to the other sets, such as like unions or trades, where you can sort of mix and match, more so the former than the latter. So even if you don't get all the pieces of the banner, then you can at least find alternatives over time, if not from welfares too. And at least the medals themselves help. Just if you want to get more emblems. So I'm pretty happy about that. Of course, Faith himself showing up just like maybe half a month before the whole Sanyo collab could be a sign. You know, a sign to be like, hey, your wallet's dead. And it's like, I get it. Surely they wouldn't put another Faith, right? Right? Because that would suck. So don't do that, Happy Elements. Even though I know you will, don't do it. I'd say nothing else, just try to get at least one copy of Bianchi, because of the whole like survive event medals, because if you just max out regular Bianchi, you can just farm hero emblems for them just over time. And even if you don't pair this Bianchi with the Robins team, like I suggested earlier, overall, if you missed a New Year's 2024 Oscar or like Valentine's Gray, or even Coffee Victor, they are a very good pick overall. Like you could just stick them in, you'll do quite a bit of damage just with modifiers alone. Just, you know, watch the HP, but hey, a lot of frames for Bianchi either provide like shields or heal, unless you get the limited ones, so it kind of works out. And you know, we have the alternative road, we have to spend the Rainbow Jacks, and I guess if you're looking at art, you got feet. So, you know, it's the best of all worlds. I just realized I'm using the wrong team for this. I should be using my For the Annie team. Don't mind me. I think other than that, it's also a rerun of the Heroes Teaching banner, which is Well, if people haven't seen the tier list that I went over with Twee, like last month, it's not a good card. It is actually just a meme. It's hilarious, but for your sanity, please do not roll for that card unless you really love Jude. And if you really love Jude, I'm going to respect that because I too love Jude. But I can also say, he's not good. Nope, big mistake. Oh. What? I'll do it later. This was actually the right team. Correct team. This is the correct team. Yeah, just the fact that he's like, hey, I'm going to heal you, but also debuff you, so you lower HP anyways, and doesn't really provide much in just offensive utility compared to his other cards, is kind of like, might have made a mistake here. And for the Robins, like, the problem with that is that meme cards are totally fine if there are plenty of alternatives, but the Robins came in 3 years after everyone else, and it's just like, well, you know, there's a little bit of an issue with that, given the whole they don't have options kind of thing. And, you know, people like to play tic-tac-toe on his forehead, and I'm just like, alright, well, you know, you guys do you, but I think that's a little bit excessive. But yeah, I think just with the whole, like, the poison debuff, like, yeah, it hurts quite a bit, but it's definitely manageable versus the sun where it's like, hey, if you don't have X or Y tool, you're cooked. And it's like, well, just enjoy a lower score. So, I really do like this kind of a balance with the whole survive events. So I guess just speaking like in my personal preference, I prefer content that was, it's difficult in having to solve a problem rather than just, hey, you have a time limit to just solve the problem. And like for this is just a DPS rates, it's like how much have you invested into your set, right? Which is terrible, but it feels very like, you know, Genshin Spiral Abyss. It's just like, hey, you know, meet the time limit, or you know, Star Rail's Forgotten Hall or Memory of Chaos, which is also a stat check. This is essentially this. It's essentially a stat check with a little bit of like forethought put into it. Maybe it's because I'm just so used to like other art games where they do like more like puzzle or like, hey, here's a lot of mechanics you need to keep track of. So I mean, we're gonna experience like the 5th anniversary this year, so I'm hoping that we get some sort of a content like that, like actual puzzles or like, hey, complicated mechanics instead of just follow this one rule. I don't doubt it. I doubt it, only because, well, they do lean towards the casual side. It's not bad, but, well, it is what it is. Just figured that if we were just gonna loop all the time like this, then it's like, well, what can get the player engaged? Like, there's one thing I'd be kind of sort of interested in is just like, I remember there was like, okay, this is gonna be like far reaching, but like in the older Yu-Gi-Oh games, there's like these these puzzle duels where they're like, hey, you have to win in that turn, but you have to solve a specific puzzle. And I would love to see that, where basically they set you up with a team with very specific stats and very specific frames, and you have to figure out a way to basically defeat it in that turn. And I'm not saying it should be anything complicated, but it could actually serve as like a better tutorial and be like, hey, keep in mind your buffs, or like look at the debuffs, or look at the interactions between stacking or non-stacking, or like things like, hey, make sure you use your allies' burst skills appropriately with their different effects. So I think it would be like a nice upgrade to tutorial, because at the end of the day, it's just like the tutorial is good to like get you started out, but in actually thinking about how to like optimize your team in terms of like damage, especially for like, since they made survive basically a mainstay, right? I think it'd be good to at least teach players like, hey, this is the effect of like a damage link skill. This is the effect of like a critical link skill, beyond just like I see numbers and understand at a high level. Maybe I'm asking for something that would just be out of scope for their current plan for this game. Probably. That also does remind me. I'm still thinking about. Sometimes I still think about first anniversary Faith and how he just has so much healing. And I thought to myself, we have survive events, but it's not really about survival, rather than just, you know, beating the crap out of enemies, right? So it's like, where's the survive? And I'd love to see that kind of mechanic in these games, but still haven't seen that yet. Because inherently, like, defensive characters, they just aren't as good as offensive characters because of the whole turn limit system. So, you know, maybe I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm like, it'd be very nice to just see. Oh, I'm out of AP? It'd just be very nice to see like actual variety in game modes, for lack of a better word. Like we have the regular quest stuff is like, oh yeah, make sure you beat your expert or expert boss battle within like a certain amount of turns. This is defeat a certain amount of turns, but also do a lot of damage. Both gimmicks. Doing quests, like quests are the only ones who's like, oh, there's no turn limit, right? And then I guess other than that, there's like, when you get the mission rubies, it's just, hey, make sure these characters survive. So I guess I'd like to see more alternatives, or like alternative missions or goals or achievements they should get in the game, rather than just raise your team up. Because think about it, like, Personality Faith is just like, he's cute. I love Faith. But man, I would never put him in a team, even if it was cool advantage, because what do people need constant healing for? There's like no content where you need as much healing as he provides. Even if you put him at like minimum level, no limit breaks, even no investment, like he'd either fold because the enemy's like for initial attack would just kill him, or he just doesn't do enough, he doesn't do much damage at all. And you know, it's like, oh yeah, maybe he's like a supporter, okay? But then there are supporters who can do more than just an obscene amount of healing. And it just I don't know. Like, I don't dislike Helios, but it feels like they're a bit stale. Because even like this whole like Arcana hero stuff is all essentially they're just rebranding Survive heroes. The Survivants make them, you know, more palatable for fit of theme. Which I guess it works just to get people like interested because oh my god, their cards are really pretty, and they are. But like I just like bringing up like a whole lot of my just experience with just games and then also like game design. It works. This is a loop that works and can keep people in, but I guess it's just harder now because there's a lot more like turn-based RPGs out there compared to before, like 5 years ago. And there's definitely potential to just set up different requirements. It's just they haven't done that, and I guess I just feel like it's a shame. That's pretty much it.
次の処刑方法はこれで決まりだな。なあね、さっきの連携かなりうまくできたと思わねえか？いちいち喜ぶな。逆らうやつは首をはねちまうぞ。
I suppose that's just enough about like probably talking about my own thoughts about Helios. Yeah, the new cards, Faith, Marion, they're also Brave attribute, and well, Marion's actually pretty good, especially because we have Valentine's North. As for Faith, he has some stiff competition from like support wise and also just DPS wise, and it's just like it's very pretty, but also, what do you mean with the whole Marion and Nico? Marion is okay, you know, we have Chitawasari. They can pair with each other, and it's fine. Nico though, we have yet to see that. So, time will tell whether or not Nico will get a card to pair back with Faith. But until then, it's just kind of like, alright, it's really pretty. Do it if you want, and do it if you like Faith and don't care for the upcoming Link story with Jet. You know, he's basically Faith is like Eastie adjacent. He has his interactions with like Billy and Gray, and I guess Jay if we really want to count the aquarium event. So that's like right around the corner. So if you're new, I definitely just focus on trying to get a copy of Bianchi from the event before it ends, because it should end in like a day or so. And Bianchi themselves is like they will serve you very well regardless of whether you're new or like your vet, because of the whole like dare with the Robins cards.
わかった。有効的な攻撃をお願いします。ああ、またか。本を読め。ああ、外さない。ああ、やって外さない。この痛みは。
In any case, yeah. I think once I finish all my survive event stuff, I'll just finish stream really early. Like, honestly, this is more like, hey, I'm getting back into the swing of things after just kind of getting overwhelmed with work, and it is definitely a lull in the whole content stuff. I definitely expect there to be a lot more to talk about next week when we get the juicy lore about how Jet kind of came to be, I think. Right now, it's just, we're just kind of vibing at this point. But
うちのチームは遠距離攻撃タイプが多い。他のやつの動きを予想しながら戦え。
ああ、わかってる。俺一人。
I will say though that I'll definitely post the gacha VOD for both February and March because the roles are well, let's just say my brand of luck has showed up again. So it's much better than February where it's like, I was looking at the content and realized there's not enough suffering. And suffering builds character. So I gotta fix that. And you know, my luck decided, yeah, we got you, fam. As for the fairy video, I will try to get the fairy review VOD out in the next day or two. I am pretty busy just trying to manage some projects. So, we'll see. As for review shorts, I will also try to do that, but no guarantees. I ended up not being able to do that for the Fight Club, which sucks, but yeah, it's during this time of the year where I'm like, man, I'm just buried in work and I'm getting like maybe 4 hours of sleep if I'm lucky. And then same with the whole survive stuff, I'll try to push that out as well. And then of course the link story stuff soon after. It sucks because I wanted to release my survive guide, but I couldn't finish it, and I have to push it back for another half month or so before it's relevant. One day I'll finish it, but I love how overpowered IRL is.
準備はいいな。俺についてこい。この痛みはやられちまった。またやってやる。本を読め。
Probably doesn't help that I'm also like a glutton of like, hey, I want to take on more stuff or learn more things. So I do end up wearing myself out a little bit. Like things like essentially going from like, hey, I'm gonna move from like Adobe Premiere, not Premiere, Adobe Rush, to like DaVinci Resolve, and I don't know if anybody who knows video editing is watching this, or if you're watching it in the future. DaVinci Resolve is a pain in the half to learn because there's just so much, especially coming from Rush where it's like super simple. So learning that was fun, but also painful. So there was that, and just also just trying to make those like motion graphics as well, even just the really simple ones. And then thinking about like just video editing, putting more sounds or like the effects. It's super fun, but also very time consuming, and ultimately I wish I could just stay up for 24 hours just to learn as much as I could, but the human body is not built that way. But I would love to hear just feedback on, or at least, hey, this might be an interesting thing to see, or this is not interesting, stop that, put your effort elsewhere, or like, oh, this might be a cool idea for like a one-off. I'm pretty chill and flexible and just trying to get things done, provided I am not suffering. as the little subscript to the left implies. But yeah, this was just mainly more of a catch-up stuff. So for anybody who plans to watch this later, again, I will try to maintain a consistent schedule when possible. But otherwise, I just like to share my thoughts and updates about things with you all, whether you're watching it now or you're watching it later. And of course, feel free to just comment stuff or just like write your own comments in like the posts I like to do. I love to hear feedback, and ultimately, this is more of a this whole channel is more like just like a sure, I like money, but it's more like a passion project in terms of, hey, these are resources because these resources don't exist. And I know the pain of just trying to find information and not having that information available. So yeah, short stream, but it is what it is. So if you're watching this now or later, thank you, take care. And yeah, hopefully we will get some very juicy tea in next week when we have the whole Link story coming out. So take care and have a good rest of your day.